Today's guest is Nathan, an ex-Mormon who spent much of his early life inside a strict religious community that shaped almost every part of his identity. From growing up in a highly controlled religious setting to moving from UK to America, Nathan's life has taken some pretty unexpected turns, but eventually he started questioning everything. What happens when the beliefs you've been taught your entire life no longer make sense? What does it take to walk away from a community, a culture, and an identity you've known for years? In this episode, Nathan opens up about his experiences as a Mormon, what he discovered along the way, and what it was like to leave it all behind and start again. This is a story about belief, control, identity, freedom, and finding the courage to choose your own path. So let's get into it, chop and chat. Are we live? Okay, chop and chat, here we are with Nathan. I'm really excited with this one. We did film this before for a very short 20 minutes, but we have plenty of time. And yeah, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Nathan. Nate, sometimes my friends call me.
Yeah.
And we got chatting as you were cutting my hair one of these days about religion and about the meaning of life and about how people view the world and topics like this. And I happen to mention that for most of my life, I was involved with what most people would call a religious cult.
Yeah.
And a cult can mean many different things to different people.
Yeah.
Some people think of people worshipping stone idols. Some people think of people in the desert, performing weird secret ceremonies. Some people think of a cult as just different people, I guess, chanting and carrying out strange practices.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of all of that.
Yeah.
But a lot of normalness too.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody starts off thinking that they're joining some strange,
Yeah.
unusual, crazy bunch of people.
Yeah.
But when you leave, you usually come to that conclusion.
Realization, yeah. So when you're in it, you obviously, it's very hard to tell you're in a
Yes.
cult. And you're the perfect person to find out from, right? So which cult, when did you start? What
Okay.
age? And
Okay, well, I'd had some association. So sometimes religion is a big kind of expansive thing. And some religions have more modern, front-facing kind of versions of themselves. And those versions are a little bit more palatable. They're a little bit more easier for people to take in, and maybe they're a little less strange.
yeah.
And then you have other elements of religion that are a little more fundamentalist, a little more old-fashioned,
Yeah.
a little bit more cultic.
Yes.
And so I started off with a version of this religion, which was more mainstream,
Yeah.
which was people would have heard of and thought of as maybe a little eccentric, but
Yeah.
pretty harmless.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in southern Alberta. I was born here in England,
Yeah.
but I spent a lot of my time in southern Alberta, Canada, and there was a big group of Mormons.
Yeah.
People who believed in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
They often call themselves members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of my friends were Mormon, and my babysitter was Mormon. Most of my mother's friends were Mormon, and she would occasionally go to the Mormon church.
Yeah.
And so that was my introduction to Mormonism, broadly speaking,
Yeah.
before I came back to this country in my teens.
Right. Okay. So nobody. So you weren't like forced into it or anything. You weren't born into it. Like. Okay. So you came to England.
Yes.
And then, yeah. How did it all begin?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I came over to England, and
Yeah.
I noticed over
Yeah.
time that I didn't have answers to a lot of the questions that people ask about life.
Yeah.
And some people are happy not to have the answers to those questions.
Yeah.
Like, why am I here, and where am I going, and what happens after this life?
Yeah.
In fact, I was happy not to answer some of those questions when I was in my teens,
Yeah.
until some of my friends began to live more reckless lives.
Yeah.
I had one friend who was in a serious accident because of drugs, and another one who had become alcoholic
Yeah.
as he'd seen his father before him be, and it kind of worried me. And I thought, I need some direction and purpose in my life.
Yeah.
And so I began to search other religions and to read up about them. And of course, I'd already had some association with Mormonism.
Yeah.
And my association with it was, I had a good friend who was Mormon. You know, I had a babysitter who was fun, used to sing and dance, and they were Mormon.
Yeah.
And so I sought out some Mormon missionaries and asked them questions.
Yeah.
And I was attracted to the answers that they gave.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have like a strong belief in God, but I liked the idea of kind of like this heavenly
You
Father.
were seeking for these questions.
Yeah.
It was just the right time. Yeah.
And it was just the right time for me to find that direction. And maybe that if I'd made different decisions, I would have found those answers in different ways. Maybe I might not have found them through religion at all.
Yeah.
But I felt I needed that stability.
Yeah.
And the answers they were giving me was like, well, you can make a difference in the world, and there are amazing, miraculous things that happen today, and we're all trying to help one another, and the sorts of things that people might be attracted to.
One
Nothing
thing
crazy.
is about religions and cults is that initial contact, which been perfected, obviously. So they obviously know how to get you, not get you in a bad way, but like. They will give you the answers you're looking for to get you.
Well, they're very eager. They believe they have all the answers. And I was a missionary myself at one point, and I believed I had all the answers.
Yeah.
They didn't give me a handbook that said, here's how to fool people and you know, how to trick them.
Yeah.
Because they know that the missionaries who already go out there believe in these things already, and they believe that these are the answers to everything.
Yeah.
And so they're enthusiastic to share them. They may give them a few pointers, and some of those pointers might add a little bit of pressure in terms of trying to get people to commit and get people to take it seriously and get people to consider like taking on responsibilities, being baptized and things like this.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the way a missionary would see it is, here's a person who we can provide these answers to, and they'll be happier having these answers. And will live a happier life because they have this religion in their lives.
Yeah, yeah.
And so because they believe that, they're enthusiastic about it, and that enthusiasm is contagious, and I think it helps. But they, of course, they don't tell you everything. They don't. There is a lot they don't tell you because they don't want to scare you off, and they think, well, give the milk before the meat.
Yes,
is the way that they put it.
Yeah, yeah. So you got drawn into this, and how old were you?
So I was 17 when
17.
I was actually baptized.
Yes.
So yes.
Yeah. And then you were still in Bristol at that time. And so what was your first day, or what was your first impression? What can you remember?
Well, for me it was, I think I felt like I was becoming part of a community.
Yeah.
You know, they had a chapel that was up on the Wells Road of Bristol.
Yeah.
And
did you feel accepted?
Yeah, I did. I felt like other people were enthusiastic for me, and I felt like they were living this story, this bigger story, you know, this bigger part in some plan, and you know, that I'd become part of it, you know, and I actually had something to contribute to it. So when I was at my baptism, there was a lot of people there, you know, an awful lot of people there, and my parents came along, and I think my dad was a little baffled by it. My mum, I think, saw it as maybe a stabilizing influence in my life.
Okay, so there is some sort of a stability in however it comes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, and I quickly gained friends when I was there.
Yeah.
And one of whom would become my future wife, and another one was one of my best friends who wasn't a member of the church then, but subsequently joined and still is. And so it becomes kind of like this ecosystem of your life.
Yeah.
You know, the people that you're amongst, you might hang out with them outside of church. They might become your social group. They may even work amongst some of them, you know, if they let you know about a job going or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it quickly becomes kind of the lens through which you see the whole world.
The whole world, yeah. And from 17, and how long were you there? What was your how was your growth?
Sure.
From initial making friends, growing up, where did you find yourself in the middle of it? Like, what was your...
Well, for me, it was there are steps. There are like levels. There are like grades that you can aspire to and work your way up.
I'm trying to still think, obviously, because I'm never. It's such an outside.
It's unusual.
Well, unusual. So you don't really know how does it work.
No.
So I'm trying to even frame my question, thinking, how do I go about asking this question?
Yeah.
So, what was the rise and how long were you there and.
Sure.
All the juicy bits, basically. And crazy ceremonies.
That all comes along. We'll get there.
Yeah.
And but they don't. When you're 17, they don't introduce you to everything all at once.
Yeah.
Bit by bit, as you go along to Sunday school meetings and other meetings, you hear about different ideas.
Yeah.
And I think you're quite open-minded about them to begin with. And if something seems out of place, you ask a question.
Yeah.
Maybe not a very deep question, but they give you an answer, and maybe it's not a complete answer, but you go, okay, I see how that might fit into the story.
Yeah.
You know, and I was very enthusiastic to read and to study, and I would find out these things. I didn't like the idea of anything being hidden from me, so it was I would keep reading and researching.
Well, you're researching within the cult, like
and it was from its own books.
Own books.
So because they had a wariness towards anything written by anyone outside about the religion.
Were you sort of told to not read other stuff?
Yeah, and I think at first you think, oh, that sounds reasonable, because you wouldn't go to somebody's enemy to ask about them.
Yeah.
Of course, if you were a journalist, you would. If you were a historian, you would. You want all sides of the story. But you start off giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
You know, these are nice people. They've been nice to you. You like the story, and you find the things that fit within it.
Yeah.
And bit by bit, unusual beliefs come out. And because you've accepted a God that can do anything, and you've accepted a religion that promises everything, it gets a little easier to believe unlikely things.
Yeah.
And so you start off believing one thing that's maybe a little more unusual. For example, Mormons, they do something called vicarious baptism for the dead. Yeah. Your ancestors who didn't happen to become Mormons, you can go on their behalf and be baptized on their behalf.
Yeah.
It's a little unusual.
Very. Yeah.
But it's not like you're digging up a body and putting it in the water. You're just going there and kind of going like, oh, I'll do this for you. Yeah. Because on the other side of the veil, as they call it, in the spirit world, they're waiting for you to do this, to release them. And so you think you're doing this great act. And when you do go along and do it at one of their temples, it's kind of they feel like people are rejoicing, and it's a very kind of encouraging thing. And so that would be something that you might learn a little while after you join the church. As time goes on, you learn more and more things. And some of those they say, oh, we don't really believe that, or that was just in our past.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can brush those things aside, and sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
And when I became a missionary, I found I couldn't brush all of those things aside as easily, because the people I was speaking to sometimes knew more about my religion than I did.
Wow. Yeah.
And they would bring up more pointed questions, and they would ask you about specific things.
Yeah.
And
you needed to know,
I needed to know the answers.
Yeah.
And I was someone who would try and defend the church, and I did.
Yeah.
But it also led me on a path that got me more deeply into the past of the church. Yes. And ultimately put me into contact with people who still believed in that past, who still believed in those old teachings.
Yeah, and that's where it gets a bit dangerous, sort of.
Yeah, it gets dangerous in the sense that the main body of the church is not friendly towards those beliefs. Yeah. And if you study them too much and ask too many questions of them, you can find yourself on the outside of that church. Yeah. And perhaps if you happen to know people who believe those same things, you might go that trajectory, or you might go a completely different one. Yeah. And I happened to meet people who had, here in Bristol, believed those old-fashioned beliefs, who had been kicked out of the church for it. Yeah. And they seemed to have the answers that I was seeking to reconcile these things, these conflicts. Yeah. And it could have went one of two ways. It could have left me thinking, well, if they don't believe this and nobody believes this, then maybe none of it's true. Yeah. But then I found a group that did believe it, and they seemed to have an extra part to the story, and I went in that direction.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, what was that like then, getting deep into that?
Well, that's where it gets really unusual. Well, I mean, I think Mormonism sounds unusual to everybody anyway.
Now you're all hooked in.
Yeah.
You're in.
Yeah.
How old are you at this point?
So by this point, I'm only like about 20.
20.
21, and so I'm still quite young, but I've just gotten married. I got married in one of the Mormon temples.
Yeah.
And to just give a brief overview.
Because a big part about
Yeah.
the Mormon
Yeah,
thing is
yeah.
about marriage, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Because it's either one of the 4 things
Yeah.
that you're supposed to do. That's all I know.
Well, so there's several things that are
Yeah.
part of your progression. One of which, of course, is being baptized.
Yeah.
One of which is, if you're a man, is receiving the priesthood. They have kind of a lay priesthood.
Yeah.
And every man who's kind of an adult will usually become an elder, or there are other offices as well. And that gives you certain responsibilities. It might be to bless your family.
Yeah.
It might be to fulfill a responsibility within the church, teaching or whatever else, preaching in the case of a missionary. And so, and then there are temple ordinances.
Yeah.
The main one they call the endowment,
Yeah.
and the one that would come after that is what they call the sealing,
Yeah.
which is when you get married, and you get married for time and all eternity. They have the idea, and we would say this as missionaries, like, wouldn't you want to be with your family in eternity? Wouldn't you want to be with the ones that you love in eternity?
Yeah.
Now, being a missionary in England, some couples would say, "Oh, I wouldn't want to be with him forever."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
some of my American companions did not know what to do with
so
the
before
British
you get
humor.
married in Mormonism,
Yeah.
you already know that this is now forever and
Yes.
ever and
Yeah,
ever, right?
never and ever.
So you're already signing up, and so even in heaven, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you can still be together. Is
Yes.
that one of the?
Yeah.
So, so you got married.
Yeah.
At 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how is now a family life for you? And then.
Well, it wasn't long. I mean, so there's a succession of different things
Yeah.
that happen very rapidly.
Yeah.
So you go through these temple ceremonies, and in these temple ceremonies you make certain promises,
Yeah.
and they're carried out, and you wear certain clothing, and it's something that seems and looks very unusual.
Yeah.
Some of it kind of harkens back to kind of Old Testament, old clothing, robes and things like
it's
this.
kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it can seem cool.
Not many people have done that.
No, and you go through a kind of a play.
Yeah.
They do it with video nowadays, but they
Yeah.
used to do it with actors, where you see yourself almost as Adam or Eve coming into the world and
Yeah.
making these promises before God, and then you're led into.
I think that's a fairy
this
tale
celestial-
wedding.
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's
Yeah.
it's very different because it's
Yeah.
only for Mormons, so there's nobody else there at the wedding. You might have a civil wedding as well,
Yeah.
and I did, but this sealing is just done with a few people in a room over an altar.
Yeah.
And so, but on my honeymoon, I opened up to my wife about these things that I've been studying and that were conflicting.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, she was even more converted to them than I was.
Right.
She was very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And definitely encouraged me to seek out people who might think this way.
Yeah.
And we began to do that before we even had our first child. And we met people subsequently here in Bristol who were living as these kind of old-fashioned Mormons.
Right.
And they'd been excommunicated from the church, and so they were meeting in a home. They had their own little kind of chapel area,
Right.
And they preached all these old beliefs. So
Yeah.
instead of saying, "Oh, that's something we used to believe," or maybe nobody believed that, that's not true, they were saying, "No, here, read it for yourself." And you could read it from the people that the Mormons considered prophets, and and they accepted it. And so this was our life in Mormonism for about 10, 11 years after that.
Wow.
Throughout the British Isles, there were different branches,
Yes.
and there were some in Europe as well, where people would believe these old-fashioned things.
Yes.
And you were kind of like in a sect of a church.
But even a smaller.
Yeah.
Not a smaller cult, I suppose.
Yes,
not,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So you're.
I mean, they wouldn't call themselves that, but
No,
yeah,
of course
but,
not.
yeah.
But I don't know.
But no, you're right.
yeah,
Yeah. It's a more cultish group that even people in that other cult think
right,
that's
yeah,
too cultish
okay.
for them.
But you fully believed it
Yeah.
at that time.
Yeah.
That you're doing the right thing. You're with them. So what did you do for them? What was your role?
So my role was, I found after a few years there that because I would study a lot, that I felt I would wander upon different information to either defend those beliefs or to explain them, or different things in history, what I considered history at the time, to be interesting. And so I would share them. And they produced a little magazine, and so I began writing articles for it. I ultimately became the editor of it.
Right.
And they, at one point, I set up a website for that magazine, and then we suddenly started getting inquiries from all over the world.
Right.
So I became a kind of a missionary again,
But
for
more
people joining. Yeah, and people throughout England and sometimes in Europe and elsewhere in America.
Yeah.
And the headquarters of this group was in America, so I would recommend people, go here in America, but I'd never been. I just knew that there were other people out there and they had bigger communities, and that one day we would join them, because that was what they called Zion, the Promised Land.
Promised Land near Ohio.
Well, so that's right, is that in the past, so Mormonism began in upstate New York, but moved down to Ohio near the Susquehanna River, then moved on to Missouri, near to a place called Nauvoo.
Missouri, where they say that this is where sort of it's the place. It's like
that's right. Jackson County, Missouri is the New Jerusalem.
That's where
everything's going to happen.
End of time.
Yeah.
Right?
End of days. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And so that was, so America to them was this place that God had set aside, that Jesus had once visited there.
Yes.
It says in the Book of Mormon.
So that bit is really interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That Jesus, after, when did he visit?
It would have been after the resurrection of Jesus, when he goes up into heaven. And
that picture, which is quite famous, right? Yeah. In Mormonism, the one with the native Indians, right?
That's right, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So
they believe that, and this was one thing that, it seems like a crazy idea now, but the idea that instead of the Bible ending and then there's no more prophets and there's no more revelation, there's no more miracles, they believed it just kept carrying on.
Right.
Like Jesus visited other lands, America and maybe other places there, and had other prophets.
Because in the beginning it was meant to be that end of time is happening soon, very soon.
Oh, they thought it was going to happen
tomorrow.
Yeah.
And because it did not happen, obviously you got to continue so they kept going into different directions. Right, and the biggest one is in Utah. So they ultimately, most of them migrated to Utah. There were some left behind and they started their own churches, but the majority followed a man named Brigham Young, who actually served as a missionary in England once upon a time back in the 1830s. And he was the one who carried everyone across and formed this kingdom. It was originally called Deseret. And it took up even parts of New Mexico and Wyoming and Arizona and Nevada and all these other places, but over time shrunk into the state it is today of Utah. Right.
And so they felt they were persecuted, and there they could get away from the government. It was actually Mexico at the time was the country that they went into. That wasn't actually America. Mexico had all of that land, and they went there and built their temples and sent out missionaries from there around the world. They sent tens of thousands of missionaries to England, and hundreds of thousands of people were baptized here and went over to gather to Zion, as they would call it.
So, going back to England again, because you did mention England a lot, and we were going to talk about you and Utah, and I didn't realize that there was so much happening here. But we don't really hear. We always hear about America and Mormonism, but not so much England. So does it still happen a lot?
There's still Mormons in England. There are tens of thousands of Mormons in England. They say there's like 250,000. I think actual active going to church on a Sunday, there's maybe 50,000.
Wow.
But there are also missionaries. There's ones here based here in Bristol. You'll sometimes find them like in Bristol City Centre, trying to speak to people. And there's still chapels. There's 3 or 4 chapels in Bristol. And but this other group to which I became associated, that's not here in Bristol anymore. I think it just kind of, as people moved over to America, some people petered out, and because that was always the ideal, was to go to Zion.
To always go to if you could sort of migrate there, that is the end goal. Okay. So you with your family now at this point, with the son.
I've got 3 girls at this point.
3 girls, and at what age you moved to America?
So I'm about 30, I think. I moved to America, and I moved to Utah, and where there are branches of this group that is much larger, where they have a temple, where they have special communities that are like communes, really. Not just in Utah, but in Montana and other places as well, Wyoming, and even in Mexico. And they hold meetings, they live everything kind of the old-fashioned way. They have their own clinics, they have their own schools. And so it's much different than the experience I've had over here, even in mainline Mormonism over here. It's much bigger, because that's over there. almost everyone you meet is a Mormon or was
because
a
you
Mormon.
just live in that big area.
Yeah,
just
But there's different kinds of Mormons, and some Mormons are hostile towards other Mormons.
Okay, yeah.
And so you have to kind of walk that line very carefully.
Okay, yeah. So you definitely don't want that beef.
No,
with another
you're
Mormon.
careful, yeah. In
Yeah,
your workplace, among, if you're going to college or something, or yeah.
So so where did you fit in there?
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Well, I initially found it, but I found it very good. I mean, in terms of, here's a community where you can go to a storehouse and get the food that you need without paying for it.
Yeah.
And here's a place where they will build you a house, if you can't get a mortgage or something like this, or even help you pay off a mortgage.
Okay.
Here, here's a place where all the people around you believe the same things, and you feel like your children can just run around and play with other children, and you don't have any worries.
So proper community, helping each other out to sort of finding jobs, building houses. So you're as sort of safe as you are. Yeah. So that way, all your focus is on the cult religion, whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's it was very positive in that sense initially.
Yes.
I think that, but over time I gained more responsibilities, and those responsibilities, I guess you'd say, helped me to see behind the curtain.
Yes.
To get to know the leaders better, to get to see things like the archives, and to hear stories from people who'd been there longer, and to really start to question things again.
Some dark stuff.
Yeah, as well as my children beginning to come against conflicts. Mm-hmm. Standards that they were held to, but maybe other leaders' children weren't held to, and those sorts of things.
Right.
And so you get a lot of discrepancies, and a lot of things that make you think that maybe everything isn't lining up as it should.
Yes.
But at first you think, well, maybe it's me, or maybe it's something I have to help fix.
Yeah.
And that was how I initially confronted it.
Yeah. So what was your first doubt?
Yeah.
And what led you on to that?
I guess I'm trying to think what the first initial one was. I'd been asked to investigate people. Yeah. Who were in that group, who were under suspicion. Not like a spy. Yeah. Not really. But sometimes people would be accused of something. Yeah. Or maybe they would do something that seemed, not so wholesome. Yeah. And so they would be told, like, we would like you to answer some questions, or we would like to look more into this. Yeah. And so they gave me that job. Right. So you were a spy. So you were the MI6 of the. Okay. Yeah. I'm not saying all of it was up front either, because some of it was behind the scenes, and the way I saw it was that if somebody, let's say, was abusive, they were a danger to the community, they were a danger to others, then it was important that those people were not put in any position, where they could abuse other people. Okay. And I felt that was important, and I felt like, well, this is cleaning house, this is dealing with things as they should be dealt with, and that this was something that was important, and because I think as any Christian, even as any Mormon, you believe in principles like people's choices and people's freedoms and people's ability not to be harmed and things like this, just general Christian principles. Yeah. In practice, sometimes those things don't always live up to their ideals, and so, but you want them to. Yeah. And so that was kind of part of my job. And in one case, I investigated someone, and I found out stories from people who were affected by them, and that person was told, basically, don't come back. Right. There wasn't any evidence to give, like the police or anything like this, but it was sufficient that there was enough doubt, and it was of serious enough accusations, and they had failed to be able to defend themselves in any real way, that in the end they were asked to leave. In another case, somebody had been accused of something, and it turned out it was just somebody who was angry at them and made something up. Right. And so they were exonerated. And so I felt pretty good about myself in being able to, this person who might be a harm to others was no longer there. This person who wasn't a harm to others had been wrongly accused was now,
Yeah,
accepted
yeah.
back in.
Yeah.
But I found out over time that things weren't always equal or even
Yeah.
or entirely fair.
You were given the key to look into really serious matters, so you were obviously going to find out. Okay, yeah. So
and so I began to sometimes I was asked to investigate someone who was the son of one of the leaders, and I saw that a lot of things were overlooked. I saw somebody else investigate someone else whom their father was friends with one of the leaders, and I came and I said, this person under no circumstances should be allowed in, and in fact we should go to the police. And found out they'd already been allowed in.
Wow.
Despite me being sent to investigate them.
Yeah.
And I, at one point, was investigating somebody else, and somebody told me about something that had been covered up, which was incredibly serious. The death of a child.
Wow.
I mean, it had been a couple decades earlier.
Yeah.
And during that time, that religious group felt like it was under siege, from the law and so on, and it felt very insular, and I think they were worried about being persecuted, and they didn't report things to the police.
Yeah.
And so things got hushed up. And I would ask around, is this true? And everybody would tell me in this one community, and it was a bit more of a remote community, they'd say, oh yeah, that did happen, but we were told not to say anything.
Yeah.
And that person was never put in any position to do that again. And I was thinking, well, this is murder.
Very serious. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Serious.
And so I began to investigate and gather some information, and I had to decide, well, some people were saying, well, no, this was in the past. This person's too old now. Justice will never be done. It'll be done in heaven. And I had to decide, well, or do I call like the FBI? That's what I did.
Wow.
And I realized in doing so that I was acting on my own authority, that I was making a decision for myself without waiting on my leaders to make that decision for me.
Yeah.
And I think once I began to do that, once I began to question those things, and to think that I could have that authority to make those decisions for myself. I mean, I was making day-to-day decisions for myself, but things that might get me into trouble, or things that might conflict, or get them into trouble. Yes.
Yeah. Or more things can come up.
Yeah.
Once an investigation starts, there's more things.
And the more I read, I knew somebody who was in the archives. They had an archives, and I would read things, and I'm going, this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah. There's more things also you saw which.
Yeah, and things that should have never been overlooked. And I honestly think that those people in leadership didn't want, I don't know if I can speak for all of them, but at least the ones I knew well, I don't think that any of them wanted anything bad to happen to anyone. But because they believed that their group, their religion was of God, and that it shouldn't have a bad name in front of the world, and it should, and certain people should be protected, and and it was, we shouldn't involve the law, and these sorts of things allow things to happen. Yeah. And because they were very strict about some things, I think it was easier for them sometimes to disbelieve people who are victims. To not to trust somebody whom they shared secrets with in the religion, or shared, kind of fellowship with, that kind of brotherhood with. Because the men would meet together and have all these meetings and so on. I think it was harder for them to believe someone if they just sounded like one person standing up. Now they had kicked people out in the past when the evidence was overwhelming or whatever, but too much got overlooked. And I had children, I had girls who were growing up. And my eldest, people were beginning to ask about courting them. They had a system of kind of dating called courting, right? Where a person would go to someone's father and they would ask about it. Yeah. And some of these men would come, and I'm thinking, there's no way in hell I'm letting this person anywhere near my daughter. Yeah,
but this is part of the part of the process, I suppose. Right? That this is. So if you were to refuse somebody who comes to your house, do they take it in a bad way?
They might, but I think the idea...
You still have the choice, of course.
I still have the choice. And I think the idea was that this is meant to protect young women, so that they don't know who was saying no, whether it was a young woman or whether it was the dad, or even the dad could have the prophet or some other person, the apostle, say it instead, Yeah. So, and that was meant to stop people being pestered or people going outside those lines. But the whole problem with that, though, is that it's still a man making a decision for a woman at every stage. And all of that system worked that way.
Yeah.
It was very patriarchal.
Yeah.
And of course, some men see that as like, oh, we're being protective.
Yeah.
And we're being, I'm just being careful, and I'm just being, I'm just, this person doesn't need this responsibility, or I'll take on that stress instead of them.
Yeah.
But those women are not making those decisions for themselves. They are making a decision ultimately about who they marry.
Yeah.
But let's say a really good man comes who that young woman likes,
Yeah.
But the dad doesn't like him.
And
that would be it,
that would be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's making that decision for her, you know. Maybe he wanted someone richer, maybe he wanted someone who was more faithful in the faith, or maybe he wanted something else for her.
Yeah. And so the dad's a given full authority, and who would the women go to if they want help? There's no such thing, I suppose. There's nobody they can go to.
Well, I suppose that a young woman could kind of appeal it or whatever, but they tried not to go outside of that authority of the family.
Yeah.
Unless there was something, I don't know, something really irregular. I think it was. I think they generally felt that was the kind of path to take, was to keep things in that kind of family line.
Yeah. So this is where things start to turn for you.
Yeah.
You've realized that. Have you realized at this point that I don't want to be here?
Well, it began. It was a number of things, because I think you begin to question the wisdom of the people around you. You begin to question their inspiration.
Yeah.
You begin to question whether the place you are is fulfilling the types of things that you expect it to fulfill. The kind of, if it's meeting what you think God would want for it, or what God wants for you, or things like this. And then you begin to question, well, is any of this of God? And then you begin to question, well, is any of this right?
Yeah.
Bit by bit. You for me, at one point, I took the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I said, well, if I was judging this as an outsider, if I was judging this as somebody who didn't already believe it, would I believe these answers? Would I believe this evidence? Would I consider this true?
Yeah.
Or would I just trust my feelings? And and so,
especially in your 30s.
Yeah.
When you're young, it's obviously very different.
I'm in my late 30s by the time I'm going through this process. The last couple of years there. So from about 38 to 40.
Yeah.
And so, but it definitely one of my children starting to question that for themselves helped me out of that.
Yeah.
I did confide in one person there, and they said to me, yeah, that doesn't sound right, that sounds wrong, but they said, this is my family. My family's lived this way since the 1840s. This is just all I know. I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, because it will be very difficult to go out there and start a new life, right? So you're gradually coming out of it.
Yeah.
Was it? So I'm in my 30s. If I was in a cult from since I was 17, it would be very scary, especially with my family. What would I do? How would I get out of this? How can I start a new life? Because this is not it's not moving a country. This is a whole a concept of life that you've.
Well, it's if all of your if the house you live in is in this kind of commune, and all of your neighbors are in this commune, and all your friends are in this commune, and and your family, and your doctor and your dentist and the school your kids go to, if all of that's there, and for many people the place where they work, that wasn't my case, so that actually helped me get out. But if it's all of those things, then you're giving up a great deal. There's a huge incentive to find reasons to believe it's true, when not believing it's true might mean becoming homeless and becoming friendless, becoming jobless and familyless. And for some people that actually did happen, all of those things. Now, I was fortunate that I did work outside, and I worked for just a general company where I could, I would at least have work and I would have an income. I knew that my eldest daughter was already kind of on the same kind of path, and so I knew that I wasn't completely alone. And I knew that people had left, and there were a lot of them around if I could find them. I mean, I didn't associate with them every day, And when you are in a religion, you think about the people who've left as, oh, they wanted to sin or they wanted, but there were just some people who questioned and went in a different direction and came to different answers. Yeah. And so but it did come to a head, and I found it very depressing at the time. I mean, it was just like, the way I put it to someone later was like, I spent my whole life climbing this ladder to get over this wall, and then I realized it was leaning against the wrong wall.
Completely wrong wall. Yeah.
and that meant that I needed to climb back down that wall. Yeah. I needed to undo everything that I had done.
Yeah. This is why it's really fascinating to talk to you, because the whole point, the reason why I was really drawn by your story is like how you got out. So it's quite inspirational, actually. Some might look at your story and think, why did you join a cult? Or some might understand why. But to get out, like, it's, especially with family, I think that's the bravest thing you could do. And also, how did you do it? Like, how did you get out? And you're clearly doing very well for yourself now. So
I'm in a better place now. It was a process.
And how long? So that bit you said it was depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go into if it's
Certainly.
too like serious for you, but how long did that take? The whole to get out?
Yeah. Well, it was a couple-year process. You know, I began to question. I had to get to the point where I could question certain things.
Yeah.
And then to take those questions seriously. And then even when I realized, like, this is not right, to be able to think through, okay, how do I change my life? How is this going to impact my life? You know, is there a way I can leave and my family will come with me? You know, is there a way that I can express these doubts or these reasons with them? You know, or friends around me? And so that was an ongoing process. As I say, I think I made decisions like, that one calling the FBI, or I befriended someone who had accused somebody in that group of something, and I believed that they were telling the truth, and I put them in contact with people who were able to help them. And so I knew that these things could have consequences, that I could be seen as undermining that group. And I continued to make decisions that I felt were right ones. I began to bring up things that made other people realize that maybe I was questioning, or that I wasn't agreeing with everything, and I think initially that was tolerated a little bit, but I think it did place me under some suspicion. And ultimately I just had to say to my family and then to my friends that I don't believe this is true. I don't believe this is right. In fact, I believe it's wrong, and I believe that these things are dangerous, not necessarily dangerous to life, at that point, but that they're dangerous in the sense of that you're putting yourself in kind of like those moral dangers. You're putting yourself in those dangers of following someone who's leading you astray, even if they don't know that's what they're doing. And in wasting your life.
You just know too much at this point.
And I think that was it. I wrote lots of questions down, and the answers that came from there were not satisfying. And they were the same answers I used to give other people who had doubts. But they weren't enough for me in the end. And it was hard to adjust. I mean, it immediately meant me having to find somewhere else, just like a little basement room somewhere.
Did they let you go?
Well, I think that there were definitely some people who tried to hold on to me, but I think by that time, I think I got to the point where I'd burnt enough bridges that they took me seriously. And had acted decisively enough and made it clear. But the person who was the leader of that group, we called him the prophet, he would call me for months afterwards, asking if there was some way to get me back, if I was mistaken, if I, something like that. And I had other people who were associated with break-off groups from that group, who thought, well, maybe he could come over to this group, and maybe just there's a problem with that leadership. And so I think for a while people were hoping for me to keep one foot in one of those worlds, and still associate. And sometimes people go away and they come back. But I think I'd waited until I was certain enough
Yeah.
And I made it certain enough that I wouldn't come back, and I just had to rebuild from, that a little room with starting off with a sleeping bag and getting a mattress and just rebuilding up from there, really.
Yeah.
And then until I rebuilt my life.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I'm sure it was gradual even then. After, but what was it like diving into something else, like another type of book, or watching something that you were not allowed to watch, or things like that, like talking to people, a different group of people, something like that? Was it?
It is interesting. It was very interesting to adapt, because I moved into a house where there were like 12 other people sharing the house or something. It was a huge house. But it was like every room occupied, some by a couple people, and they were living all different sorts of lifestyles. In fact, some of them had kind of left Mormonism, the more mainstream version, and were exploring their kind of independence for the first time. And a lot of them were kind of in their 20s and 30s, younger than me, and their lives, I was kind of almost living vicariously through them. But I still think I was still very timid, taking very small steps at kind of experiencing the world outside. Because I hadn't drunk alcohol for most of my life.
Really?
I hadn't drunk tea or coffee.
Yeah.
And so those things were things that had previously been sinful for me,
What was that like?
And there was a day where I reached where I thought, no, I would like to try some alcohol.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't have an addictive personality, and I did try some when I was in my teens, so it wasn't, I didn't feel as dangerous, but but I thought it was just fascinating, and to just feel like this was, I was looking to see if I was going to get struck down by lightning. And I didn't.
Were you really? I can imagine. I mean, you were in there for so long. Yeah. You truly, obviously believed. Otherwise, why would you be there for 20-something years? So. Okay, so that's how you felt. Yeah,
and I think there was a lot of that, So for a little while I dated, and that was very unusual.
Yeah.
Because
because of course you're.
It's very chaste, and you might hold hands, and you might kiss before you're married. Some people don't even do that. So I mean, and so it was a whole new experience there.
So that brings me back to another question. Again, you don't have to answer this one, but. Did you have to break off from your marriage then to move on to
so that was something that was almost decided for me in terms of, because you're married for eternity and you make those covenants, if you break those covenants, if you become what they call an apostate, if you become somebody who's an enemy to the faith, then those covenants are considered null and void. That you're effectively released from that marriage, and from your family even. And so that you're not part of that marriage. And if somebody, in fact, stays with you, they might be considered an apostate too.
Right.
Because they're staying with somebody who left the faith.
Yeah.
And so I realized that, and I had talks with my wife, and her faith was not impacted by my doubts.
No.
She remained and still remains, very devout.
Right.
And so there was no question of her coming with me. I spent probably a year persevering, trying to create.
Was it difficult because obviously now you've gone away from her, and now you have to live in a shared house. And you're still trying to somehow get her out. That must have been very tough.
And my children too. I mean, because another one of my daughters got married and was in that group. And I was very anxious about that.
Right.
And as I said, younger children too, some of whom were born there. And so it was difficult. I mean, it was difficult because some of my children rejected me initially too. And since they have left, but at the time, I think it was very difficult for them. Because they're thinking, well, here's my dad, who I thought I was going to be with forever, in this religion, and he's, and I, of course, would still see my children, but they were, they were thinking, who's this devil that we're being made to see for a little while anyway, know? And I think it didn't take them long to realize, no, I'm still the same dad.
And, that's good.
And,
good.
I was very fortunate that way.
Yeah, I'm glad there's a good story to this in the end, because okay, so you made it out 2 years and you come back to England after that. And so how long did it take you to sort of finally let go? Or have you let go, or have you just learned to accept the good things and let go of the bad? Or
yeah, I think part of letting go is accepting that, because you start off and you're kind of, you feel a little betrayed.
Yeah.
You feel that certain things you were lied to about, or that were hidden, or that weren't what they promised to be. And then you feel kind of a sadness for the life that you lost and the opportunities you lost.
Did you feel a little bit?
But excuse me, I don't know that I feel that way anymore.
Good.
I would, it'd be lovely to get the time back. But if I didn't have that time, there's other things in my life I wouldn't have had as well. Like my children.
It is an interesting, obviously, life in your children. Of course.
And I learned some lessons the hard way, but maybe I wouldn't have learned them, or would have learned them a harder way through a different path.
No one's life is easy in that, it could take it any direction, what are the chances you might be born again and you might still be in this, there's no guarantee.
And I can see now, I mean, that's the thing, is I can see the things that led me there. And some of them were good things. A desire to help other people, a desire to just cooperate and to be part of a bigger story, and to the idea that life could have hope and meaning, and there's positive sides to those things, I think. Of course, religion can take advantage of that, and you could be part of somebody else's story, and that story may not be true. And so you're trying to bend yourself into shape into their story. And that's where the problems happen, because none of us, I think, perfectly fit into someone else's story, or perfectly becomes what someone else thinks is perfect. And so you're always struggling to meet that ideal. Because it's an unreasonable ideal.
Very unreasonable. Well said. Probably my last question would be, do you have a message for people who are still in there, or you don't really care? Do you search what's happening, or you just let go of?
Not as much as I used to. There was a time where I went through and I wrote a lot of things, and I tried to reach out to people, and that continued for a while. I was asked to talk on some of these things by some other ex-Mormons, and I was grateful to be able to share some of these things, and I think it helped some other people. But I will occasionally, most of my life now, I might check maybe once a month to see, what's happening. I'm like on a Facebook group, and I'll see people who were old friends there, some of whom were part of that but have left since, and it's just neat to see what's happening in their lives. But occasionally, like a few months ago, I was walking to Bristol City Centre, and there were two missionaries, and I started chatting to them. And they had a lot of questions. And we met on another day, and we spent the entire afternoon together with them asking me questions. And I tried to be very careful, because I knew that it's good for them to have these questions, and it's good for them to wonder about whether what they teach and believe is true, but also they're young and they have families back at home, or usually Mormon, and they have their whole lives ahead of them, and they're going, these decisions that they make now will have a huge impact on their lives. I knew someone, this was when I worked for that company in Utah. They moved to Colorado, and some of the people moved with them, like me, I did. And one of the people who moved was a young man who began to question his Mormonism, and his entire family cut him off. And he committed suicide. And so you see the impact that kind of the rejection of your family can have on you. And I'm lucky that I went through some dark times, but I had a few people around me, who kept me close to me.
You were older as well.
Whereas this other person, wasn't aware until afterwards, and he didn't share those things. And so I think you have to be careful when somebody's invested their whole life in something, on how you handle talking to them.
Because you could give them the answers, and even let them really know that. But it's their journey; they have to discover and find out, I suppose. And
I think for anyone, if you come across somebody who's in a cultic group, in any religion actually, where you make assumptions that may seem fantastic, unusual, weird, or whatever, where somebody's committed to beliefs that seem narrow-minded or might just seem unusual, or you're worried about them because they're in this group that has a lot of control. You can make fun of them, but you do that, then they feel persecuted. And they feel like, you came from the devil, and this is just a test of their faith. So and that doesn't tend to change them.
No.
But if you ask them questions that get them to question themselves, then they might find their way out slowly, but they might find their way out. And that's what I've tried to do in those circumstances now, not proving things wrong, but asking people questions that I know might get them
Eventually
to question some more. And if they're really interested, then I certainly can give them information. But I try to get them to go back to the sources.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about this isn't coming from me. You know, this is something you're discovering on your own, and you can make up your own mind about.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's encountering these things for the first time, let's say they're listening to this, and they just were visited by some missionaries, and they picked up the Book of Mormon, and maybe they like parts of it. I'd say you need to ask questions outside of the missionaries.
Yeah.
You need to search for yourself. You know, you have the internet,
Yeah.
and you will find sometimes people who are bitter. You will find sometimes people who get it wrong when they're trying to criticize things.
Yeah.
But you'll also find things that come from the sources themselves. You'll also find people who are sincere and good and living happy, fulfilled lives who came to different conclusions. And it's worth listening to them.
Yeah.
And it's worth hearing their stories and seeing why they didn't accept those same things,
Yeah.
why they made a different choice.
Yeah.
And whether you can, by analyzing things now, you can save yourself those years that you might spend in someone else's story.
Yeah.
Trying to make that come
or
true.
the future of your children, and
Yeah.
also like you mentioned,
Yeah.
the one of your somebody who lived with you in Utah, who was from the 1840s, just and could not get out. So I think it's amazing that you made this decision. You got out, and what does Nathan now do in his spare time? How do you live your? I know you're happy, and you've got a partner, and what's your?
Well, nowadays I have a lot of hobbies. I write, I work on little video games and board games. I have a great group of friends, which I've kind of made anew over here, and we just hang out together. We occasionally have a drink.
You no longer fear the
no, because I know that you can have a drink and not get drunk, and you can have a drink and not go wild, and I know that you can that you don't have to be 100% perfect, or you can have some things in moderation, and so and so for me, I've realized the power of stories, so I enjoy writing stories. I feel that we can kind of discover the world through writing. I love science. I love to research scientific things. And I just love to travel. I love to experience other cultures and other places in the world. And sometimes that means their beliefs too, the things that motivate them, the things that are part of their history. And I can have appreciation for that. And I think I've seen some very good examples of religious people who are kind and giving and charitable. For whom religion is a part of their story, but it doesn't lead them to the point where maybe they're persecuting someone else, or maybe they're hating on someone else, or maybe they're trying to stop someone else from living their life. Because when it tips over into that, then religion becomes a dangerous thing.
If you stay in that bubble, and if it's working for you, oh great. But once you see something on the outside, and it becomes difficult, and then you have a tough choice to make. Where your humanity lies, and what things you're willing to give up of yourself, or what things you're willing to do in kindness to other people. Well, this is great. I think we covered everything, and I'm sure this is a lot more to your story than just an hour of a podcast. But it was really amazing to speak to you, Nathan.
Thank you for the opportunity.
For doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.